What movie had a happy ending until you consider what had to happen next? The Wizard of Oz. Dorothy wakes up and tells people about her silly dream. That's great. Miss Gulch is still going to kill Toto tomorrow. Toy Story 3. It's all going to happen to them, again, in another 10 years, and they are going to do that for the rest of their lives. At the end of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, you just know that Cameron is gonna get the ass kicked out of him by his dad. Inspired by WALL-E, where it would still take decades before the people were actually able to live off the earth, and their quality of life would still be awful compared to their lives in the ship. The Truman Show. This guy has no idea what the real is like and he is just thrown into it. Most people have 18 years of preparation. Return of the Jedi. I'm not familiar with any of the Star Wars expanded universe, but I would imagine that the collapse of a political entity as large as the Galactic Empire would be extremely messy. Breakfast Club has already been mentioned, but Bender most likely went home and got beaten by his dad again after the movie ended. The Day After Tomorrow. It isn't hugs and giggles. Things do not go back to normal. The human race got a major bitch slap. Much of the upper hemisphere is covered in ice. Let's not mince words. A few billion people died. Whole nations were wiped off the map. Yes, you have survivors, but ponder this: food. A huge section of the world's agriculture was taken away. How are you going to feed the remaining masses? Doesn't include shelter. Those lucky ones who were on the edge of the frost are going to move further down South America and Africa. While true, the ice will melt eventually, this massive snow front will have a huge effect on global climates, colder sunlight being reflected off the surface, rather than absorbed. The survivors will have such terrible hardships ahead. It will take a generation or more to bounce back. I'm not even talking about political turmoil. Warlords, tyrants and dictators will rise to power. Wars over limited resources. The movie ends with our gang getting picked up by what remains of the US government. The future is so uncertain, many more will perish from harsh weather, starvation, sickness and/or hostilities. We don't just hold hands and sing Kumbaya. The human race will suffer with huge blood losses to come. There was a good video on YouTube about this. The one I remember is Robin from the Dark Knight trilogy. Batman had handed the mantle to a guy who had no training, which has a lot of implications lol. Literally every rom-com ever. They like the idea of a new romance, the flair of falling in love with a new person, and the excitement of getting married. Remember how you made googly eyes and wooed her and she promptly left her stable, and obviously totally boring relationship for you? Yeah, guess what, chimp? Give it a little bit and it'll happen again, except you'll be the boring guy that gets left behind. Zootopia. The whole plot of the movie hinges on reshaping the natural order by all living in unity. That's great. Right until you realize that herbivores are still super good at reproducing to make up for carnivores, as shown by the rabbit population sign counter going up at a ridiculous rate gag. Except nobody's eating them anymore. By the end of the movie, it's also revealed that there's herbivore extremists which wants to take it further and get rid of carnivores. Overpopulation and possibly genocide is on its way. Braveheart. I mean, the movie is historically inaccurate, but it ends at the Battle of Bannockburn, where the narrator says they won their freedom. But this freedom only lasted for like 5 years before war broke out again. Up. Little kid's dad bailed on him and his only friend is old as F and knocking on death's door. Beauty and the Beast would most likely end with a Robespierre-style uprising. That, and they would have no furniture. Forrest Gump. Jenny dies of AIDS. Forrest is married to Jenny. Married people have unprotected sex. Taken. Liam Neeson gets arrested for mass murder. Mad Max. Fury Road. They just open up the mains and empty out the water onto everyone below the Citadel. Immortan Joe may have been a brutal, dictatorial monster, but he managed those resources. They're going to deplete that reservoir in no time. Back to the Future. You still keep the guy who full-on tried to rape Lorraine, your wife, around and in employ? Why? Monsters Incorporated. There's a reason they made a prequel and not a sequel. Laughter being 10 times more powerful means a lot of factory monsters would have lost their jobs, even accounting for the energy crisis. Olympus London has fallen. I guess we could count White House down on this list too. Western world leaders' governments are shown to be incredibly vulnerable to terrorist attacks, even in the most secure home office building in the heavily guarded capital city of the most powerful nation on earth, or at the most heavily guarded event within the capital of one of the strongest nations on earth. Mockingjay Part 2. There's most likely going to be pro-Snow supporters, loyalists, especially in the capital and peacekeeping ranks. Some loyal general could very well have hid out in the Canadian North or Mexican jungles or Rocky Mountains with a sizable number of peacekeeper, possibly plotting a counter-revolution, coup, or outright declaring independence from Panem, James Cameron's Avatar. Let's be really honest here. The RDA will very likely come back to Pandora with much deadlier firepower and in much greater quantity. No corporation of that scale will just abandon a planet moon rich in unobtainium. Hell, they might even have more Dragon gunships on the way, maybe even fighter jets. No Banshee or Great Leonothrix can effectively take out fighter jets going 1,000 plus miles. Not a movie, but whatever. Avatar. Legend of Korra. The Earth Kingdom Empire is now going to be in ruins. A bunch of independent states may likely breed another Kuvira-like dictator with an imperialistic vision to reunite the Earth Kingdom again. Even if another imperialistic dictator doesn't conquer the other independent EK states, bandits are now going to all come back and anarchy will plague certain areas. It'll probably take decades for things to settle down and to ensure that all of the now independent Earth Kingdom states don't collapse and become a failed state. Also, spirit weapons are now going to be a thing. Whiplash. Outwardly, it seems like a happy ending. Andrew proves Fletcher wrong and showcases his abilities as a musician. However, that's exactly what Fletcher wanted and proved that his abusive teaching style works. All Fletcher wanted was his Charlie Parker. That's why he was so angry when his former student died. He thought he was going to fill that role. When Andrew begins his solo, at first Fletcher is clearly mad and confused, but as Andrew continues, Fletcher guides him and the movie ends with them sharing eye contact before finishing the song. With this, Andrew becomes his Charlie Parker, something Fletcher can put on a pedestal and say, I created that talent. You also have to consider what happens to Andrew after this. He goes right back into the abuse he suffered from under Fletcher and loses all the love and enjoyment that he has for jazz music. In my opinion, I see Andrew having a similar fate with either the real Charlie Parker, heroin addict who died of an overdose at 34, or Fletcher's former student, suicide. The Lion King. When a new male takes over a pride, he kills all of the last head males, cubs. The Prince of Egypt. Moses frees his people, only to get totally dead over by them and their damn cow. Oblivion. Even after solving what killed the planet is still dead, with at least 55 more Tom Cruises flying about. I shiver at the thought of that many Tom Cruises. X-Men Days of Future Past. Considering how Logue starts out, things didn't end well despite the happy ending. Get Out. This whole white family is murdered and the only survivor is a blood-soaked black guy. In the uppity suburbs? Seriously good movie. One of the best I've seen in years, but I left the theater and the first thing I said to my husband was that investigation is not going to go well for him. Rent. Mimi has AIDS. She'll definitely be dead soon. Roger and Collins have HIV in the 80s. They'll probably be dead soon. Mark is all alone and is gonna watch his best friends die. Joanne and Maureen might get a happy ending though. The original ending of Office Space. Edit. There was audio at the end where the construction foreman comes up to Peter and starts talking just like Lumbergh, meaning that Peter was as the exact same hell, just a different location. Test audiences thought it was too depressing, so they edited out the audio. It just shows them talking as the camera pans back. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to hear more of the best posts.